Hi, and welcome to the kitchen. You know, when you're in Mexico and you go out for tacos de guisados, that's the more stewy-like preparations, the kind of things that taste delicious like your grandmother used to make, not the grilled meats tacos or tacos al pastor. When you go to those places, they always have rajas con crema, and it's roasted poblano chilies with caramelized onions and some cream, and it's so good. Today, I'm going to take that preparation, add a couple of different ingredients to it, and I think I'm going to make some of the best tacos in the world. Well, of course, we got to start with the poblano chilies. I'm going to put them onto the stove here and roast them. These ones are real beauties. They have very vibrant looking skin, no wrinkles at all in there. And I'm going to set them over the highest flame that I can get on my stove here. You may be wondering about this little expanded metal device that I have here. I like it. I think they roast more evenly and more quickly if you elevate them just a little bit. And so that's why I like to use this little, it's called a chili roaster. Sometimes you find them, sometimes you don't. If you're in the Southwest, they're a lot more available. Even online, I find them sort of spotty, but you can just do this directly over your gas flame, just kind of balancing them there on the stove top. And I do that a lot, especially if I'm just going to do one. But when I've got a couple of them, I like to get them up a little bit, get the flame coming more around them, and then they will roast a little faster. You're hearing all of the blistering going on of the skin, and the whole idea here is that we're going to blister that tough skin to take it off, but at the same time we're going to partially cook the poblano. Now, if you don't have a gas range, then you're going to do this sort of tied up under a hot broiler. I like to get it on put the rack on the highest level and then slide them in there directly on the rack. Don't put them on a sheet pan or anything like that because it'll warp the sheet pan, that much heat on them. Once I hear the sparks of the blistering sort of slow down, then I start looking at them here, and I'm about 2/3 of the way on that one side, and then I'm going to flip them over and do the other side, and then I have to, the sort of flat sides, the skinny sides that are there, I'll have to tip them up and do that too. The whole process will take about 7 or 8 minutes or so. When they've cooled until they're handleable, basically, then rub off that blackened skin, then tear them open and then pull out the seed pod and the stem and get rid of those things. And then I like to give them a really brief rinse just to get any stray seeds and bits of skin off of them. Then cut everything into about 1/4 inch slices. If they're very long, then I cut those strips in half. So the poblanos are done there. Now onto the caramelized onions that typically go into this dish. I'm cutting the top and bottom of the onion off. And then I'm going to cut these into pieces about 1/4 of an inch thick, but I'm cutting crosswise on these now. That's the little 2 pieces that I don't want in there. Same thing for this one. And then I'm going to do the cooking of this onion in olive oil. You could use any kind of fat that you like. A lot of times people will have that really beautiful pork lard on hand in Mexico. And they'll use that even though this is a vegetable dish, basically. So I'm going to put about 3 tablespoons, so it's a good amount in here. You'll see why in a minute. It's a little more than you need for just doing the onion. I've got the pan heating here over a medium heat, and I'll put these guys in there. You want to be able to hear just a little sizzle when they go in there. Let me check I've got it a little bit low. I'm going to put it up just a little bit. These will take about 8 minutes or so. to come to that really beautiful richness. I'm looking for them to have some texture on the inside, not to be completely caramelized and soft, but I want them to be brown caramelized on the outside. Now, the next thing that we'll work with is the potatoes here, and these are not baking potatoes. These are the boiling type of potatoes. The baking potatoes will just fall apart in this. There's more of that creamy starchiness in this kind of a potato, like the red skin ones. I'm going to do my typical way of cutting these guys, where you take some of the skin off but not the whole thing, and this will allow me to make even cooking small dice. Here I want it to be a little less than a half an inch, so I'm going to cut this into 3 parts here, and then 3 parts here, and then cut the dice out of that. And remember that this is going to be a taco filling, so the pieces have to be small enough that you can actually contain them in a tortilla. So there's one of them. I've got a pot of water on over here. It's boiling away, and I have salted this water. Now, I have heavily salted this water, and I think a lot of people, when they hear heavily salted water, think that they're just going to take a salt shaker and sprinkle it over and that's going to do it. No, it actually takes way more salt than you think. I put a couple of tablespoons in here, and I will tell you how to test whether you have heavily salted water or not. Take a little taste of it. If it tastes like seawater, it's probably just about right for this kind of work, for boiling pasta, blanching vegetables, whatever it might be. Yep, I'm just right there. I've got to cut up the rest of these potatoes, and then I'm going to throw them in there and cook them until they're just done. I just checked one of these potatoes, and they're tender. These took, at a rapid boil, they took about 8 minutes or so. And I'm just going to scoop them right in with these beautifully browned onions here. And we're going to keep our pot going here. Turn up a little bit more. I turned it down so we get a rapid boil on there. And let's talk about my green. Now, in Mexico, they would typically be using amaranth greens, which they call quintoniles, or they would be using the quinopodium greens that we call lamb's quarters, and they typically call those quelites de ceniza, and those you can find in all the markets. It's harder to find this one, but they're all of the ones that I just told you about are kind of a sturdy green. They have a really beautiful flavor, both the quintoniles and the quelites de ceniza. So I'm going to use this dark chard here, the one that's called either dinosaur kale. I call it chard. It's kale that's in front of me here, either the dinosaur kale or the lacinado kale. And a lot of people tell you to take the stem out of the middle of it. I'm going to cut the woody stem off of the bottom of it, but I'm going to use the stem in all of this, just bunching it up and cutting crosswise here in about 1/2 inch slices. I think that the stem adds texture, and I don't think that there's any reason to try to get rid of it. Plus, it takes a lot more time to work through it. I, for years, took it out because I thought there must be something wrong with it, but there's not. So now I've gone to, you don't want the really woody ones at the bottom, like this piece that got in there. And then we'll take handfuls of this and we'll put those right into this boiling water here. Again, heavily salted boiling water. Put that piece over there. And these will cook until they are just barely tender. For me, that's about 3 or 4 minutes. So I'm using a skimmer here, the ones that we typically call a spider. I really like this piece of kitchen equipment. If you are cooking pasta, you can get out a small amount, like if I'm just cooking a couple of servings of pasta, that works really well. Or if you need to get something out of boiling water, like I did these potatoes. I'm going to give this pan a stir, and we'll let them all cook together for a short period of time here while the kale is cooking. This is 4 minutes on the kale. That's kind of where I like it to be. You might like yours a little more tender than this. This will still have a little crunch, especially with the stem part of it. So we'll use our spider to get all of it out of the water. And then I'll turn that off. Put all of this together. One last little bit of the kale there. And then I'm going to add these chili strips to the skillet. We're coming down to the final little bit here. Mix everything together. It's so beautiful, I think. I love greens. I love roasted poblanos. I love caramelized onions, as if you didn't know that already, because I like to put them in practically everything. The potatoes add a really lovely amount of starchiness to this, I think. And now we're going to add the cream, but I've got a lot of things to say about the cream. Okay, so I'm using Mexican crema, and I'm just going to scrape it all into the skillet here. You can use the Mexican crema, either store-bought or homemade. You can use just regular whipping cream. That will work beautifully in this. It won't have as much tang, but it'll be delicious here. You could do store-bought or homemade crème fraiche if that appeals to you. And then if you're looking for something that is super easy, you could go to a sour cream, but you're not going to do the sour cream the same way as you're going to do any of the first three options that I gave you. This all needs to cook together for a little while to create the right kind of coating on all of the vegetables that are here in the skillet. With the sour cream, you actually have to take the pan off of the heat, let it cool for a minute, and then stir the sour cream in there. If you're looking for something really creamy and really, really lean, then you could use Greek yogurt. Again, you will treat it just like you would treat the sour cream. Take the skillet off of the heat once everything is completely hot and sort of simmered together for a couple of minutes. Then add that and stir it all in. It's different, but it gives you a little creamy element. If that appeals to you, there's lots of different options here. So I want enough cream here to just coat everything. It gives it a wonderful mouth feel. I've actually seen people do dishes like this without any cream in it in Mexico. But it's kind of hardcore when you do that. So I like the creamy element here. So we'll let this simmer for another minute and all of these flavors to kind of come together. And I'm going to turn the heat up just a touch there. And then we're ready to go to the final stage of tasting and serving. So this won't take a ton of salt because we salted the water heavily for the potatoes and the greens. So about a half a teaspoon is plenty usually for this, this amount here. Then I'm going to scrape it into this really, really beautiful cazuela from Mexico, Simple Market pottery. Look at that. Now I get really excited about these kinds of tacos. That's probably my favorite style. I mean, I can't really say that because everybody loves tacos al pastor and tacos al carbón in Mexico, but the tacos de cazuela are some of my absolute favorites. Of course, you need some beautiful hot corn tortillas. We've got that. I've got some queso fresco to sprinkle over the top of it. This is a typical garnish to go on this particular dish, whether it's just rajas con crema or my souped up one with potatoes and kale. And then I like to serve it with a kind of spicy salsa. So this is my herby, spicy tomatillo salsa that's got lots of different herbs in it. I think it goes perfectly well with this. And this is not only a homey dish, but it can become a real family favorite. I hope you enjoy it.